Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brant County Council meeting of July the 30th. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Pierce is online. You can hear us, Councillor Pierce?
Yes, I can, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2 on the agenda is our land acknowledgement. Councillor Bell, you have that?
I do, thank you. As we gather, we acknowledge that we meet on the lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, 6 nations of the Grand River, and the traditional territory of the Atiwanderog. We remind ourselves that the County of Brant is situated on lands that are full of rich Indigenous history and home today to many First Nations, Inuit and Métis people. We recognise the significance of their contributions to the past, present and future of this land. As a county, we have a shared responsibility for the stewardship of the land on which we live and work, and a commitment to the truth and reconciliation calls to action. We commit to continue learning, reflecting on our past, and working in allyship.
Thank you. That takes us to number 3 on our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda, noting there's an addendum, which is the workings and the presentation of our first delegation. Anyone have anything else they want to add to the agenda? Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. One item under other business, please.
Other business? Yeah. Anyone else have anything to add to the agenda in order to have for other business? Seeing none, Councillor Kyle.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pierce that the County of Brant Council agenda and addendum for July 30th, 2024 be approved.
All those in favor? Thank you. Number 4 on the agenda is declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone see anything? Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 11-2, just per the previous conflicts declared for business.
Sure, thank you. If anyone else has anything that crops up, please let me know. Which takes us to number 5 on the agenda, which is the delegations. And our first delegation is Amy. Amy's not here, is she? No. So it's Kim from SCOR. If you want to come up and just give us your name and who you represent, and her information, her presentation is the addendum. Nice to see you.
First of all, I'd like to give, my name is Kimberly Earls. I'm the Executive Director of the South Central Ontario Region Economic Development Corporation, or SCOR EDC, and I would like to give regrets on behalf of our Chair, Norfolk County Mayor Amy Martin. She has had something come up that she was unable to move in her schedule. So with that, am I in control of the slow? It's just the mouse, or aha, okay, thank you. That work? Okay, sorry. So just as a quick reminder, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, the SCOR EDC is a not-for-profit corporation owned by the counties of Brant, Elgin, Middlesex, Norfolk, and Oxford, and collectively we are about 1 million population, and if we include the separated cities that are within our geographic boundaries, we're about 1.5 million. And we came together in 2010 as a means to stretch our collective resources and focus on issues and opportunities that were regional in nature, and that maybe one partner county would not find it easy to take on their own. And so, there we go. And so our current strategic plan focuses on 3 pillars or 3 priorities. And the first is infrastructure supporting economic development. The second is human capital supporting economic development, pardon me. And the third is sector development with focus on agriculture and agri-food. And this is just a quick slide sort of demonstrating the sort of the flow of information and all of the resources and staff complement that you're able to tap into as part of the partnership. So 2 elected officials from each partner county sit at the board of directors, and they provide our strategic direction and give us our marching orders for the year. And that information flows through myself and through myself, we have other staff at SCORE as well. We have a resource advisory committee, which is senior staff from each of the partner counties. So collectively, we're able to bring a lot of skills and experience to the SCORE team. And we kind of like to think of ourselves as right-sized. We're sort of that 1 in 5 as neighboring counties. We hold a lot in common in our economic development opportunities as well as our challenges without being overly cumbersome. We're still able to come to consensus. And for representatives for Brant County, we have Mayor Bailey and Councillor Chambers, and then our current chair is Amy Martin, who is the Mayor of Norfolk County. Just a little bit about transit. Some updated information. I know you had recently received a report from your staff on transit, and they are certainly a valued member of not only SCORE, but Southwest Community Transit, which is a coordinating project through SCORE whereby we have found some collaborations through inter-community transit. So within our member system, so it goes a little bit beyond SCORE, we have about 1 million population. If you look at the geographies that SCT serves in terms of population, it's about 2 million, and that's a land area of about 21,000 kilometers squared. Of the SCT community population served, there's about 375,000 of those that are over the age of 65, and nearly 200,000 are lower income. And from 2020 actually, when SCT was really implemented, and this is a little bit different for Brant County because you fully support your municipal transit here at the county level, but some of our members rely on provincial funding as well. But you can see there's a huge increase in ridership. So when a lot of the municipal services were launched, there was around 38,000, so just shy of 40,000 riders collectively that year. And unfortunately, we did launch in the middle, at the outset of a pandemic, so that's reflective in those numbers. But you can see that we've really increased over the past couple years, and we're just shy of 120 now, that's accounting for about a 213% increase. And across all of the counties, the routes and the ridership ranges from about a 41% increase to a almost 1,300% increase. And as of the 1st of June, collective ridership across the counties is around 65,000. And this is just a little bit about the service area, so you can see it's quite a large geography. We've recently had Wellington County join the SCT partnership as a collaborative partner as well, so that's a growing number, and it just speaks to the opportunity to have mobility across not only the SCORE region but the wider SCT membership. And in relation to relationship building and collaboration, so specific to SCT, over the last 12 months, we've had 12 meetings with MTO minister and or staff regarding transit and transportation, and that's not just specific to the intercommunity transit, but we've certainly had delegations speaking to expansion of routes, highway routes across our region, in particular north-south routes going from Norfolk into Brant County, so Highway 24. And the MTO does hold us as SCT as a model for, as an example of best practices. I've been asked to sit on a few national delegations as part of the Ontario MTO contingent, and so that's something we are very proud of. Another one of the projects that we've been kind of moving the needle forward on is short line rail, and although that rail does not in particular go through Brant County, 60% of grain farmers of Ontario that are living in Brant County utilize the Elmer ethanol plant, which does rely on the short line rail. So there is an economic connectivity there that directly speaks to prosperity for County of Brant agricultural operations. And that short line rail piece has also been instrumental in the attraction of manufacturing investments across the region. So in particular, it runs actually into the PowerCo property that is in St. Thomas. And so we're really looking to the future of not only that section of rail, but rail in general, to do a few things in the future across the region to help us support and increase supply chain development across the entire region, and to, of course, act as a climate change mitigator for the logistics for goods across the region. A little bit more about that. So there is also some potential for multimodal development for freight. And again, many of the investments that we're seeing across the region, including here in Brant, are looking for access to rail, whether that's direct or indirect, which is the case right now in a lot of our communities. So that is something that we have been able to support. And in the sort of the lower right portion of the slide, you can see our original economic impact assessment survey. That has increased significantly over the past 2 years with investments that we've seen across the region. And then a little bit further about infrastructure energy. So we have been focusing quite a bit on ensuring that the region has adequate and timely supply of energy, and those advocacy efforts were generated. Actually, the spark of those was right here in Brant County. You had the opportunity to have an investment come to the county, and there were some issues on the timing for some of the infrastructure required, and so we had worked collaboratively on that to bring to the province the issue, and they are moving forward with that. So part of that, one of the pieces I have in here that shows the map with the kind of cooling was interesting. We had a chance to go and visit one of the distribution sites. And one of the things that we knew, but was a nice reminder, is because that energy distribution network is so strong across this part of southwestern Ontario, it really gives us an economic advantage. And one of the pieces that they had mentioned to us was that in the cold snap that went through Texas and much of the southern parts of the U.S., I think that was 2 years ago, heating prices and prices were very unpredictable and increased dramatically. While here, because those infrastructure pieces are in our region, we stayed relatively predictable and stable. And so again, just kind of another large example of some of the great work that we can do as a collaborative organization.
Kim, I'm just going to step in here and get council's permission to let you go over the 10-minute. Councillor Kyle and Councillor Chambers, all those in favor, you can keep speaking. Thank you.
So sorry, I'll talk fast.
No, now you don't have to talk fast at all.
So one of the other projects that collectively we're facing across the region, of course, is housing availability of different price points. And of course, you can see there's so much growth here in County of Brant. As I came in from the south, I just live a little south of here, I see all the great activity that is happening. And so we partnered with the Rural Ontario Institute to provide some tools for developers and communities to utilize to, again, really look at options and opportunities for housing infrastructure at all price points. Some other projects and initiatives that we will be rolling out in the upcoming year. We continue to work with the Workforce Planning Board of Grand Erie, and we have supported them in and I don't want to steal their thunder, but a great project that they will be unrolling and will be partnering on, which is a HR toolkit for businesses. As we have all these great investments, we're going to see more and more issues related to workforce, and so we want to be sure that we are supporting you here at the county and providing those tools where appropriate. Other things that we're focusing on are issues, again, mainly related to growth. Certainly education and schools needed across the region, supporting satellite campuses. I know because of your growth here in County of Brant, and you have the one high school that certainly, making sure that we have those educational connections with the province have been important, and those are conversations that we're continuing. And this kind of ties back to the energy piece, but again, advocacy. So over the last 12 months, we've had 32 various ministry meetings. We've been invited to speak at the Standing Committee on the Interior for Bill 165, and that is a picture of our chair there. And we've had direct meetings with Minister of Education and other ministers as well. And again, those were issues specifically brought forward by Brant, County of Brant representatives and council. And other committees that we support regionally are the Intergovernmental Interministerial Committee, which is a mouthful to get out. We continue to sit on the Program Advisory Committee for both Fanshawe College Agribusiness Management and the Conestoga College Agricultural Equipment Operator Program. Even though that program has been put on hiatus, we still sit on that committee. And, we've had the opportunity to, provide some input to staff and work with staff directly here. And I'm always pleased to get invited to sit on the committees for the Salute to Brant Business Awards as well, which we're able to do every year. And again, just a recap, the long-term strategic planning at a regional scale is really the mandate for SCORE, and the value of partnership. Just a little bit of a breakdown on what you have access to for the membership fee. And with that, I think that's everything. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Kim? Councillor Miller, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question about SCORE, but just want to tap into what a little bit of your expertise. You talk to people throughout the 5 counties. I want to ask you, Kim, as the Economic Development Director for SCORE, what is your assessment of the economic health of the SCORE region today in July of 2024? What is your assessment of the economic health of the SCORE region in July 2024?
Sure. So I would say we are, in a very advantageous spot. Oh, thank you. And, we're seeing a lot of growth across the entire region. Certainly here at County of Brant, because you are closest to sort of that larger GTHA area, you're probably seeing that growth first. And that's a good thing, but with it does absolutely come some challenges. So again, making sure that we have those infrastructure, those community infrastructure pieces like education, like, good transit, good systems. So I think that we are in a great place. We are getting many inquiries, and really I think we are on the radar of site selectors and investors that maybe we hadn't been in the past. So that's good to see.
Thank you, Kim.
Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you to Kim. Kim, just wondering, you mentioned the advocacy piece, and I know you guys have been really successful in having some great delegations at conferences in the past. So just wondering if you've got any secured for AMO coming up next month.
We do. We have 5 confirmed right now. Do you want me to say good who? So we definitely have a delegation with Minister Fedeli for Economic Development, Job Creation, Trade. We have a confirmed delegation with Minister of Infrastructure, King Asurma. We do have confirmed delegations with, I'm going to get this wrong, but what used to be OMAFRA, Agriculture, Food, and Agribusiness, I believe, and then Rural Affairs. So that's sort of 2 delegations. And we have secured delegations with members of the opposition as well.
And Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, to Kim. Kim, the story on transit, we've heard it a couple of times now. I'm kind of a doubting Thomas, I'm afraid. Do you have any information, a breakdown of the ridership by municipality? Because my sense is that we're on the fringe here, and I feel like I've been on the fringe in the 6 years I've been on council, and I would like to get off the fringe and into something more substantial.
So, just as a sort of rule of thumb, inter-community transit especially, but transit in general, you typically see stabilized riderships or rider behaviors after the 4-year mark. So even though we have had transit for that length of time, 2 of those years, unfortunately, were in a pandemic when, we were advising people to stay home. So we really only have about a good 1.5 years of stats. My understanding is, and if I'm incorrect, somebody please turn off my mic. But I know here in Brant County, or I believe that you have a new provider, and I have had the opportunity to actually speak to that provider last week or the week before, and they have got the capacity and the capability to provide amazingly detailed data. So I think you're really going to see that change over the next very short while.
Yeah, you've got a number here, 119,000 riders in 2023. I'm interested in how that breaks down across the many municipalities that number covers. I know we got our own transit system. I know we move people around the county. I'm really interested in how do we fare in moving people out of the county. To give you an example, how would somebody get to London on public transit from here?
Yeah.
Or Woodstock, just to make it easier.
That is a good question. So it's a little bit different here in County of Brant. You are on a mainly on-demand system. However, neighboring counties, so for instance, Norfolk County has an inter-community transit route that comes into Brant County, I think 4 times a day. So there's that one. And then laterally kind of into Oxford and Woodstock. So again, Oxford's also a little bit unique. Their system is at the lower tier level. So it's really held by the town of Tillsonburg rather than Oxford County. But there are transit routes going into, I think, into Paris. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that there are partnership conversations where Woodstock and Oxford County are looking to support or at least entertain the possibility of routes coming into Brant, recognizing that sort of that east-west route is something that would be very helpful for not only medical appointments and education, but also for employment.
London is, I don't know whether people are aware, but London was ranked as the #1 place in which to retire in all of North America, mainly because of its connections to the States, but I think beyond that, the access to healthcare. So a lot of people I know do go up to London for healthcare, but they have to use their own transport or they have to use a private taxi firm. I think I will feel really more comfortable with this part of the SCORE agenda when we're actually talking about links between counties and particularly between Brant and somewhere else. Thank you.
Alison wants to speak.
Thank you, through your worship. So you will be receiving a report. I believe it's coming in September, and it was intimated by our transit staff. So we've been, and Kim and everyone at SCORE has been a great resource here. The biggest difficulty is it's going to be limited by cost or how much we want to put into it. It's enormously expensive, and it's complicated by the fact that everybody is on different transit systems. in an ideal world, and that's part of why we've been speaking about VIA, because they are so data driven, and we've been really pleased with that portion of them as a provider, to see if we can possibly get something in place where some of the other communities who are not happy perhaps with their transit systems or want to expand could also go with VIA, which simplifies connectivity hugely, to not, because you're not only worrying about the basics of timing and routes and that sort of thing, but you're trying to connect different systems that work on different apps and different platforms. So we're hoping that that's going to be a possibility, but incrementally we're working on routes between hubs. So potentially with Brantford having a fixed route, and also hubs like the GO station and VIA station to get either further south or east. So, but again, it's going to be an incremental shift, and it's largely going to be driven by cost, I would imagine. But some of those options will come forward in the fall.
Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Kim. Thank you for coming. It's sort of on the transit side of things as well. Would you say right now that we're maximizing our usage of SCORE as it relates to using our transit for the inter-regional transportation? If not, what would that, could we be using SCORE more? And what sort of resources would you need in order to further facilitate sort of this the more integrated transit systems amongst the region?
Sure. Thank you. So I'm a little biased. I always think you could be using SCORE more, but I do think that we have a great relationship with staff. I think to Allison's point is, in particular in transit, because many of these routes were started and sort of envisioned as individual routes serving their county with maybe some inter-community connectivity, they did evolve in a way where it was sort of, okay, we have the capacity and the finances to go with this provider, and maybe another community tried another thing. And so within this partnership, there are, and please let me know if this is too long drawn out. There are systems that run strictly on demand. There are systems that have fixed routes, and there are systems that are hybrid, so a little bit of both. And really, I think the next evolution of transit, in order for us all to get the best that we can, is exactly as Allison said, for us to move towards a more coordinated approach where we all have the same technical provider, where we all have the same service and fare structure, so that it is predictable for riders, and it's a little more familiar. And one of the biggest things for us in rural Ontario is just behavioral change, right? We're just maybe not used to using transit the way maybe our larger urban partners have. So I think there's definitely opportunity for increased collaboration and efficiencies, but again, that comes down to cost and time.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councillor Chambers?
Just a couple comments along the same vein with the transit systems. And it's a good advertisement for the value of SCORE, in that SCORE helped to initiate this system, and SCORE tries to coordinate this system. SCORE doesn't run the system, it tries to coordinate. And as time goes on, it's a work in progress. As Kim says, there is different systems. We have an on-demand system. Oxford has a route system. Middlesex has a route system. Norfolk County has a route system, and they're trying to look at on-demand. So as this evolves, I think what you'll see is the combination within each municipality of on-demand and route, and that's what SCORE is trying to work toward, is a regional system where you have each region within itself a transit system, and each component of the region connecting with that. So it's a work in progress, and I know Kim with her sitting on the partnership committee, these kind of things. I think maybe in 5-10 years you'll see a more robust system like Councillor Bell is looking at. But keep in mind, this started from nothing as a suggestion from the ministry to the SCORE partnership to start something like this. So it's a great advertisement for the value of SCORE to each contributing partner. And the money we pay into that pays dividends such as this. And this is just one of the aspects of SCORE.
Are there any other comments? See none. I'd just like to say that SCORE has gone through a very interesting year where we did sit down and figure out whether there was value and how much value. And there's great value in SCORE. And it was nice that it all sort of came to the table and we all got to say what we thought and say what we were trying to get out of SCORE. And I think that SCORE is much stronger because of last year. I think everyone talked out loud and to each other, and I think that's very important. And I think that people watching tonight, I think a lot of people, or some people, think that we have taken our eye off the ball with transportation, and it's not true. We haven't. We've got things going at every angle, at every point. We have people like Kim talking about transportation, thinking about transportation every day. So for those that are watching and think that we aren't doing anything about transportation in the county of Brant, it's just not true. We just aren't doing it maybe as publicly as people might want us to, but we've never dropped the ball and we haven't stopped trying. So if there's any concerns or comments or questions for Kim, I'd like to have a motion to receive the delegation for information. Councillor House, thank you. Seeking a seconder. Councillor Kyle, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And thank you, Kim, for coming.
Thank you.
That's our only delegation for tonight, which takes us to consent items, and we don't have any. And we have nothing to receive either, but it takes us to 7.1 on our staff reports, and that's the 24 King Edward Street traffic lights. And Mr. Murphy's in the room. You have a report here, 7.1 in front of you. Are there any questions to staff? No? Let's have a motion then to receive the report. Councillor Coleman, seeking a seconder. Councillor Oakley. No more questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for coming in case we had some things to clarify. 7.2 is purchase of a vac trailer, and Mr. Demers is in the room. I'm sorry? Recommendation to approve. What did I say? I'm sorry. To approve. Are we still all right with that? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Okay. 7.2, Greg's here. You have a report in front of you. Are there any questions? Councillor Chambers.
I'll move the recommendation.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Oakley. Greg's in the room if there's any questions. If there's not any questions, I'm afraid to say anything now. I'm looking for a motion to approve. All those in favor? Thank you. Takes to 7.3 on the agenda, which is the Dundas Street East Paris Oak Park Road servicing upgrade. Any questions? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could, I guess I can put it on the floor first of all, if that's okay, and then I can speak to it.
I have a seconder in Councillor Howes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I would like to understand in the report, I guess it's page 3 of the report. As you can see, it goes to the L82 Construction Limited for $7,840,000, which is fine. We got 9 different submissions on that, which is great. They range from 7.84 million to 12.8 million. My question is, as far as the engineer's estimate, and it does say in the statement that county staff did think the engineer's estimate was overly conservative. And I appreciate that. Usually, they usually, they put in 10% just, to be conservative for the unknowns and that type of thing. But I'm shocked by this one here in the sense that we're almost, $4.6 million conservative. That's, it's 37% lower than the engineer's estimate. I'm wondering here, to me, this is a huge gap, especially when you see 7 of the 9 bids that came in were $3 million lower than our engineer's estimate. So a couple questions I have is, number one, do we use the same engineer for all our quotes? How does that work? And number two, can somebody help me understand how we can be, I understand being conservative, don't get me wrong, add your 10% for the unknowns, but how could we possibly be this far off on such a very important large project? Can somebody explain that to me?
Mr. Walton.
Through the mayor to council and to Councillor Pierce. So I think there's a couple of different things here that we need to consider. One is that during the pandemic, which we're still coming out of as far as some of the pricing, the pricing on these projects got really out of control. And if you know back 2 and 3 years, 4 years ago, we were only getting 1 and 2 bids on the projects too. So some of the unit prices were out of hand, and part of that was supply, lack of labor. There's a lot of reasons for that. Clearly, this is coming back into a play that we're getting more competition on these projects, and we've had that throughout this year. But one thing that happens is the engineers' estimates don't keep up with what's happening in the year quite as fast. So they will have been doing some of the estimates on this back in the winter when they're finishing up the projects. The engineers on this is GM Blue Plan, who have a new name now, GEI. So no, we use the engineer's estimate is from the people that are making the drawings. So in this case, it was GEI. It's whoever does the particular estimates. Some of the tenders we put out this year are from our own staff, so we then do the estimates based on the form of tender and the quantities that we have. So I've had this discussion quite a bit with our own staff on this. When I was hearing that, we were, in the $12 million range, I'm like, how is that happening for this project? We thought it was way too high right from the get-go, as stated in the report. So I think we need to be thankful. We've got better competition now, and we're actually getting a good price, because part of this project we're going to be billing out to the adjacent owners that we're hooking up with services. So, the fact that we're getting a good price is a really good thing.
If I could have follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate that, Rob, the fact of the good price and stuff like that. But in all the quotes that I've seen of late, and as far back as I can remember, I've just never seen one that's had this large of a difference before. And I just want to make sure that it's an apples to apples type thing here, because if it's the engineer that's making the drawings of what needs to be done, and they're saying 12.5 or whatever it is $million, then sure, I can understand maybe they don't keep up with the trends or however it goes. But as I say, this is beyond anything we've ever seen, especially when you get 7 of the 9 bids that are $3 million cheaper, which is 25% plus cheaper than the engineer's report. So again, I'm trusting what you're saying here, Rob, that we're, it's an apples to apples, but and I appreciate the fact that you did say in there that you saw that the engineer's quote looked a little high, but this one's it's got me scared. I just want that on record.
Thank you, Councillor Pierce. Does council have any other concerns about this? Do you, Councillor Miller?
Yeah, just I'll reiterate what Councillor Pierce said. I agree. I thought it was good to see the lower price. I was kind of surprised at the $5 million price difference between the lowest and the highest bidder. I thought that was quite interesting. But reading between the lines, it sounds like the price pressure has kind of eased up a little bit on these things, and I think that can only be a good thing. My question is, when is this job starting? Because there's an end date, but I don't see the end date is May 31st, 2026. When is the start date?
Mr. Walton.
First question.
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, we won't have a start date until we actually sign the contract and have the meeting with them, but it'll be starting in the next few weeks to meet that deadline. I would suggest by the end of August.
And then the second question, this says bidders for this tender were pre-qualified in the winter of 2024. I'm just wondering why we didn't get this tender out earlier.
Mr. Walton.
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, we couldn't put it out till the engineering drawings were done, and they were later than we would have liked. That's for sure. But we always knew that this was going to be a two-year construction. So they're going to have a good period of time to construct parts of it this year. We certainly will have a plan for the end of asphalt season to make sure that we leave the project in decent shape over the winter, and then we'll be finished next year. And it is, as you see, it is quite a large project. And I'll reiterate, we're happy to see the price where it is. You know, we can't afford all these ones up in those high stratospheres because it's all got to add up to the totals we have in the overall budget.
Okay, just I've always been told that the earlier in the year you get the tenders out there, the better. But maybe in this case, the delay might have helped a bit. So we'll take a win when we can get one.
All right. You want to speak to it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. In addition to what Rob said, there's a couple other things that have probably affected the price. Between when that initial estimate came through and then some work that Joe and I did behind the scenes, we found a location a lot closer for the disposal of the excess fill material. So there's probably a large savings in that as well. The estimate itself, GEI has done a lot of work in the GTHA with a lot of drilling, so their pricing may reflect that area versus necessarily what we would see in our area. So they probably overestimated for that. CN's been a challenge to get to where we are, and the cost price tag to do that bore underneath the CN tracks also very difficult to estimate what the real cost will be. Because this is a multi-year project, it will start this year. We're not 100% sure what will happen. We do know that the contractor needs a CN permit to be able to actually do their work, and that is done after they submit a work plan as to what they need to do. That we're hoping will only take 3 to 4 months. It could take longer. So one of the initial things will be for the contractor to submit that permit, and that work won't be able to go ahead until next year because we're not going to let them close underneath that structure until there's no snow. There's directional drilling to be done. There's other things. So it is a whole bunch of different pieces to get put together. And once we, like Rob said, once we have a schedule from the contractor, how they're intend to do it, then we'll be able to report back to council. But I think those are, and because it's a multi-year job now that they're starting and they can do something this year, but now they've got a job to come to and start right away next year. That may also have been reflected in the pricing as well to be more attractive to ensure that they had a job to start next year. So there's things that you can't really account for in that estimate that contractors will put into their pricing when they price a job, depending on how advantageous it is for them to do it and how it's set up.
Any other questions? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, but before I make a question, a comment that I would have about the cost of this job. Maybe my memory's failing as I get older, but I can't remember a bigger job. You're saying my memory's failing, but I don't think I can remember a more expensive road construction job in the 6 years I've been on council. So whilst it is relatively less than our budget, it is in absolute terms a huge job. And that leads me to my question. Mark, you said it's going to be a multi-year project. At the same time, we're tearing up Grand River Street North at the north end of town. We're tearing up the downtown in Paris in 2025. I think there's a really great need for coordination of when certain sections of road are being worked on and when others are not. And I trust that staff have got that under control. But maybe Rob or Mark could just comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, there's a lot in my head, and I've had this conversation with Councillor Howes about it, but it will be put on paper, and I'm going to be working with communications to put something out so we can share that information through to both council and the general public as to when different projects are planned to go and how they all kind of fit together. And we do realize that we have to, you know, space things out so we're not all in the same area and allow traffic to move and everything else as we plan for all these projects. But there is a lot going on and planned in Paris over the next number of years. But it will be all pieced together to not, you know, be on top of each other and as best we can.
Yeah, I think one of the objective functions in this exercise should be to keep traffic flowing to the best of our ability. So I think I'll leave that with you. Last question, L82. I've never heard of L82. When did they last do work for us and how good were they at it?
Mr. Walton.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Bell. I'm not sure if L82 has ever worked for us here before, but they're a well-known London contractor, and they've certainly worked for me before in the past in Oxford County. And back when I was in consulting, they've been around for 30-some years at least.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you for coming up and explaining those things to me, because I think we need to know all that stuff, because everything is not created equal. And I mean, just the fact that the dumping, as you said, is different and timing is different and that they're guaranteed something for 2 years, all makes a difference for their staff, and it makes a difference in the pricing. So thank you for letting us know that, because it does make more sense now. What I'm asking for is a motion. We have it on the floor. It's been seconded for approval of the staff recommendation as it stands. Councillor Howes, are you ready to vote? I've got it on the floor. Yeah, and it's got a second. I'm just looking for the vote. All those in favor to support the, thank you. Takes us to number 8 on the agenda, which is communications, and there's 2 of them. I believe Alicia wants to speak to each one of them separately, so if you could come and state your full name and where you work this week.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council, Mayor Bailey's correct. There's 2 items of communication on the agenda tonight. Both are generally planning related. The first one, 8.1, you'll see is a letter from the Brantford Mosque. They are essentially requesting a letter of support for their project from Council. You will recall that they attended in June as a delegation. In response to that, a Friday file was sent out as requested, just outlining what the application proposed, where planning was at in the project. Since then, this letter has come in, which led to a conversation between myself and Rashika, who's their agent, just asking ultimately, you know, what's the purpose? What is the purpose of this letter of support? Because it does deviate from our usual planning process. And in conversation with her, what she has advised me is that there was an application put before Council. It was one of those 170 odd numbers within the official plan to convert the subject lands from employment at that time to residential. That particular proposal was not supported by staff, and ultimately it was not one of the items that was pulled by Council. And so it's not within the current new, let's say the 2023 official plan. What they are proposing now would require an official plan amendment, and so they've changed their application somewhat When they first came, it was solely residential. Now it's community and institutional use. So they've presented their dream of a school with future residential use. So that would still require a conversion from employment lands. My understanding from Ashika of the purpose of this letter is that they've had conversations with Wilbauma, who's recognized that the official plan is still outstanding. He also has recognized that a proposal similar to this was put before council as part of the official plan process and was not implemented. So what the output of this would be is that if a letter of support is received by the mosque in relation to this project, as the official plan is still outstanding, he can take that letter and see if that potential official plan amendment can just be built in to the new official plan.
Thank you. I want someone to put it on the floor first. Usually we would just receive this as information with correspondence. We're going to discuss it. So Councillor Coleman, Councillor Chambers. Oh, is you seconding it? No, you're not seconding it. I need a seconder to talk about it. And Councillor Chambers, you do want to say something. What do you want to say?
I'm just confused on this one, and I wanted to get in before it gets on the table, because if it gets on the table and then is refused, it looks pretty bad, and I don't think we want to look bad. But this is a requesting support of an application before the application is before us. So how are we supposed to adjudicate the application through a public process after already having said we support it? So they're putting the cart before the horse, and it's putting council in an awkward position, because if they receive it and don't do anything, that looks bad. If you approve it and then end up not approving it through the public process, or then you look bad. Like, it's really, in my mind, through the explanation, it's even more complicated because it is an official plan issue. So if they are taking this to the official plan people, the ministry, to get approval there, that circumvents our process here. So it's just an awkward letter, and it's something that puts us in an awkward position, because we don't know the details, all the details. The concept is I suppose good, but we don't know what the application is. So I feel very uneasy putting this on the table to support with all I've said. And I also feel uneasy in not doing anything, and I also feel uneasy in turning it down, but turning it down without prejudice, recognizing that it's an application that is forthcoming to be looked at in more detail, I think is the way to do it. But I'm not going to support it at this point anyway.
Yeah.
So through your worship to Councillor Chambers, just to confirm, we have not received an application. They've come in for a pre-consultation.
Well, that even makes it worse, because then we say, yeah, it's a good idea. Then they come and do the application. Then we turn it down. Like, you just can't do that kind of stuff. So I don't know whether they understand completely the planning process as it relates to zoning changes and official plan amendments. Approving the concept of a school is great. I think that's great if it's can meet the zoning requirements. But I think they're looking at the approval to have the official plan approved and the application approved before it's even before us. So it's maybe somebody else can help me on this one, because this is
it is rather difficult. Councillor Coleman, we're going to go back to you first, just because you have it. Do you want to take it off the floor? You want to leave it on the floor? Then I need a seconder before we can keep talking about it. Councillor Hauser, my seconder. Now we can keep talking about it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do think we should talk about it.
Yep.
But I do think the proper way is to defer this. And then we just looked at it, talked about it, but we haven't made a decision. Because if we make a decision, no matter which way we do, we're going to get crucified. We'll get crucified by the applicant, we'll get crucified by the community. Because the community hasn't had a chance to deal with it publicly. I don't want to see messes like we had in Burford a few years ago.
That's right.
And I would think if, you know, after everybody has talked about it, I would remove a deferral on this until the appropriate time that there's an application, a complete application sent in.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley, you're next, and then Councillor House.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sort of a different angle I might suggest is I would be happy to move that we support in principle the idea of a Muslim Islamic school. I think it's clear to all of us at the table that there's a community that needs it, that would like it, but not go so far to support this specific application. Because I'd be happy to say to the Muslim Association that we're happy to support in principle the idea of there being a school in the county and working towards where that could happen, but not necessarily endorse this specific piece of property. This is just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Councillor House, you're next, and then Councillor McAlpine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, yeah, there's some interesting semantics in the words involved in this, and I think we have to be very cautious in choosing words like support, which can be misconstrued as approval. And so I think we have to avoid all of those words, and we also have to avoid the words decline. So I like what Councillor Coleman was saying about defer or refer. I think the appropriate step here would be to receive the communication, encourage the Muslim Association to come back to us through the proper planning application steps, and we look forward to discussing it at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Councillor McAlpine.
Well, I just wanted to point out that we did have a briefing though on this, and there is some serious concerns about this property and its development in this manner. We have source water protection problems. We have problems with the airport tying up its use. There's areas that's supposed to be set aside so it won't interfere with that. And the problems with actually taking employment land for other uses, which we have a limited amount of. And so I think that it's very premature for us to be giving any support to this project at this point. And I know it is sensitive, but these things unfortunately are not always possible. So,
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The letter says that the Muslim Association of Brantford is requesting a letter of support to allow establishment on a specific property. We, as Councillor McAlpine said, received a Friday file that said there are issues that we should not ignore. So my view is this is premature. I think we should encourage the Muslim Association to follow the process, and if we need to go and talk them through the process again, we should offer to do that. But at this stage, all we can do is receive this letter as information, but certainly not give support, in my view.
Okay, so usually with communications, we do just accept as information or whatever. So I'm looking for council to give me a recommendation as to how to proceed with this. Councillor House.
My recommendation, through you, Mr. Mayor, my recommendation would be to receive it as information and refer it to the planning application process.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Coleman. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Didn't hurt very much. 8.2, you're going to speak to that too, Alicia.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Council, once again, just referring to item 8.2. So this is a piece of correspondence that has been drafted by Mr. Michael Haley. You all will recall that he attended or his application was presented for information at the most recent Planning and Development Committee, just with regards to a subdivision at 29 13th Concession Road in Scotland. I wanted to take the opportunity here just to address some of the comments that he's made within his report, with the hope that that this will help at least outline the process that happened for Mr. Haley. So in his documentation here, he notes that the application drawing that he brought in for pre-consultation was substantially different from the one which appeared before you at the last Planning and Development Committee. I'm here to affirm that that is indeed correct. He did attend with a drawing which was very much different than the one which was subsequently presented and submitted as an application for approval. He further notes that there was a pre-consultation meeting with regards to that initial drawing, and that's correct. He also notes that there were comments made from planning staff with regards to that document, suggestions with increased density, mixed-use residential commercial blocks, municipal roads and sidewalk connections. So I'd also like to note that that is also indeed correct. When he did bring in his drawing, those were notes which were provided by the planning staff in response, and others, not just planning, and others, with regards to this project. As a result from that, he came back with a drawing which he felt was more in line with what planning staff wanted. I know there's been some debate and some discussion about potential motivations outside of the planning process, so I'd just like to make that clear that the drawing was made in an attempt to respond to those comments. That being said, I would like to say that those weren't necessarily bad planning comments. What he presented was, approximately 2-acre lots. So yes, the planners made potential comments on density, right? Can it be considered? There were comments with regards to mixed use within that plan, because it wasn't part of the original drawing. So there were also discussions with regards to movement of incorporation of sidewalks and these kinds of things. And so I think what I just wanted to clarify was, yes, that is indeed the case. That is why he amended his drawings. He has attached a drawing which he has indicated to my team. It's a bit more in line with what he envisions his development being. Whether or not they proceed with that or whether or not they don't is unclear. So I would like to just speak out in affirmation that yes, that is indeed what happened. However, the planners' comments were also in line with, the OLT decision, which said that, in order to remove the holding, which is already on the property, that a draft plan of subdivision have to be submitted, which achieves complete communities through an efficient, compact, connected, and coordinated development pattern with a range of housing types and uses where appropriate. So the planners provided comments in line with that. He returned with a plan, which is not necessarily popular. And I just wanted to clear the air that that is indeed why that plan came back in the way that you saw it. As to whether or not we'll move forward in that way or not, I'm unclear. We're waiting for future proposals from them or for some feedback from them, but we have had good discussions, and hopefully something productive will be back before you in September.
Thank you. I have a mover in Councillor House to get it on the floor. I need a seconder before we can speak to it. Councillor Kyle, thank you. Discussion, Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Alicia. First, thank you for putting it all on the table. You've affirmed a bunch of things that we needed clarity on, and that's very helpful. And just to see, for us to see the reality of it all. My question is, at this stage, does Mr. Haley have the opportunity to revise his planning application back to his original intention, understanding that he had encouragement to make it more dense, but does he at this stage have the opportunity to revise his application to the less dense version for which the community may have a better appetite?
Through your worship, Councillor House, great question. So currently, we are awaiting 1 or 2 departments to provide comments on that initial submission. Right now, planning staff and county staff as a whole are moving forward and considering that application because that's what we have before us. We are waiting for comments for 1 or 2 more departments, at which point we will be sending them back. The problem is that the clock is now ticking, and so if they were to, in return to that, submit something else, I'm not sure that there would be enough time for all of the circulation that would have to occur internally and then to provide meaningful comment back by September. As to whether or not we would try to do that, 100%. We've told him that we're willing to work with him. We've taken a look at a drawing. It was a large map. I'm not sure if it's the same one he provided you. I'm assuming it was. And so we have discussed some potential ways forward for him, but that would be up to him to initiate. But as of right now, we will do our very best if he sends something in to try to circulate that and get meaningful comments back so that we can make a recommendation on that in September.
Anyone else? Councillor Miller?
Just a couple of comments, Mr. Mayor. I do like his drawing better than the one I seen at planning. I'm just saying. I think we, as a planning committee, as council, have to be a little more cognizant, maybe, of things we say at our meeting and outside of the meeting, as far as planning applications go. Because sometimes it emboldens certain people in the community to maybe do things they shouldn't be doing. I know Mr. Haley's been accosted, his wife's been accosted. And I was, like you said, I was disheartened to hear about that, right? Because, you know, people are taking it very personal. And it's unfortunate because this land is designated in the official plan as residential. It's going to be developed. Whether Mr. Haley develops it or someone else is irrelevant, it's going to be developed. Personally, I would prefer if we had a local developer. Mr. Haley and his wife could take the easy road and sell it to any number of big developers and do okay. But at the end of the day, like I say, I think it would be best for Scotland, for the community, if we had somebody local who responds, you know, we can probably work with. So just throwing that out, that we have to be careful again what we say in meetings, and yeah, let's work with Mr. Haley. Let's not work against him.
And through your worship to Councillor Miller, that's part of why I'm here this evening, just to confirm that that drawing was done as a result of planning comments.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Miller stole most of my speech. I don't know where he got it all, but anyhow, I want to thank staff for coming forward with this. I think that takes balls, and no matter what, to do that, and I commend you and whatnot, and I hope this works. And echoing what Councillor Miller said, Mr. Haley and his wife and family have been harassed, which didn't need to happen, because it wasn't right what had taken place, because we weren't making a decision at the last meeting. It was an information session. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. And I would echo the comments from Councillor Miller and Councillor Coleman. I had a good discussion with Michael as well, and it's really unfortunate how his family has been treated by the community based on a drawing that wasn't of their choosing to start with. So I'm happy to hear that staff is willing to work with them, because to Councillor Miller's point, it's designated for residential. There will be houses on that land, regardless of whether it's him or someone else. And I would also much prefer a local person who lives in the community, raising their family in the community, and really understands what the community would like.
Any other comments or questions? So are we going to just receive this as information? Is that the best thing to do at this point? Everyone's shaking their head. I'll make that what we're voting on then, just to receive as information at this point. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Alicia. Takes us to number 9 on the agenda, which is resolutions 9.1, and that is Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by I'll read it here. It's moved by myself, and Councillor Bell is seconding it. Whereas the County of Brant uses a pre-qualifying process for the list of vendors eligible to be considered for any RFTs, And whereas the lowest bid or cost from the list of pre-qualified bidders is then awarded the project. And whereas there are no other options to allow consideration for county or council to look at and include any past performance of other contracts awarded to the low bidder, and whereas without considerations, the contract is simply awarded to the lowest bid and does not necessarily promote the quality of work we expect in the county of Brant. Therefore, that staff be directed to complete a full and comprehensive review of the county's purchasing/tendering policy, thus that awarding of any tender is not based solely on having the lowest bid, but it also takes in other factors, such as but not limited to the quality of all previous contracts completed for the county of Brant, and that staff ensure that there is a review/scorecard completed at the end of each project to document potential issues and performances or any other part of the project. And also that staff review the pre-qualifying process, in that once on the list of pre-qualifiers, that there are standards and expectations and reviews that allow bidders to remain on the list and or possibly be put on a performance review or removed from the list altogether. It's not just once you're on the list, you're on. And that finally, council be made aware of what qualifications are considered in being eligible for the pre-qualified list, and of any changes to the pre-qualified list of vendors as they happen via Friday filings.
Thank you. We're going to speak to
and I'd like to speak to it if I could.
Yep, Councillor Howes is before you, and then Councillor Pierce. It's going to come right back to you.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. As I've mentioned in previous meetings, my day job is very involved in a lot of municipal purchasing projects, and it's very common for RFPs to have a caveat that says the lowest bidder will not necessarily win this contract. So I support what Councillor Pierce is trying to do here. I believe that there is an opportunity for us to improve how we evaluate the bids that come in on these tenders, and I think this is a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I just want to say that I am in complete favor of having this pre-qualified list. I think it's a great idea. I think it helps expedite some of these RFTs, but I just think that there has to be more to it than just the lowest price. And then the last part of it, I think, as we all know, there's things that have come up that could be educational for us councillors, and I think this is one of them. I mean, if we look at the approval this evening for the Dundas and Highway 2, where we don't really understand what all is involved in these RFTs, and I'm not saying we have to know every little intricate part, but maybe we do. But I mean, when there's differences like we saw earlier tonight, and then when there's factors that, unless I'm completely mistaken here, that aren't taken into consideration as we continue to grow and continue to award these RFTs, I think it's important that we do ensure that yes, price is definitely important, but quality of work and past history is also important as we continue to have more things done in the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garneau, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I want to start by saying, while I'm not opposed to this group revisiting the procurement and purchasing policies, I'm not sure this is exactly the right way to go about it, particularly because what I see here is a prescribed outcome of a process. And if we were to go down the path of a review, I think we should not potentially foreshadow what the outcomes might be. If I were asked a week ago or so to comment on this as someone who formerly bid work for the county and other municipalities, I would have further thoughts on it. I think there's broader challenges right now in the market. It's very volatile, as we heard earlier this evening. In certain trades, contractors are hungry, in certain trades they're not. I feel that if we were to go down this route, we would need to ask questions about, say, insurance requirements, bonding, other things. But I'm also mindful from the contractor's perspective, that if we are not seen as a good place to do work, that influences the pricing we receive on the tenders. Ultimately, contractors have to make money, they have to cover their costs, and the margins on a lot of the municipal work is very tight. So if we put ourselves in a position where we're asking a lot more administratively, or there's a lot more hoops to jump through to get the work, that will then be reflected likely in their pricing. Ultimately, what I wouldn't want to see here is that we become one of those municipalities that the contractors see as a bad place to do work. Certainly what we've seen in the recent tender calls, and as Mr. Walton alluded to tonight, we have many, many bidders on a lot of these jobs. And when we go back to a project that got closed last week around this table, there was only a single bidder. So it seems to me that we are making progress in the right direction as far as the bigger jobs. And I don't want to dismiss, I know that the residents in key areas have been very frustrated by road construction in particular, and this reads like something that's speaking primarily to infrastructure work. But I'm not sure this is the way to go about getting the outcome that some of my colleagues here are hoping for.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman, you're next.
Well, just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I would like to hear from Mr. Walton on this subject because he's the one that's involved.
Yeah, Mr. Walton, do you want to speak to this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Just a few comments. I think the purchasing policy actually, as it's set out, actually contains many of the things that Councillor Pierce is asking for here. At the July Administration Operations Committee meeting, I did offer that staff would bring back and do a presentation to committee on the things that are in the purchasing policy. And so, for instance, we don't pre-qualify for all projects. There's many that we don't, and there actually is a scoring system in there for considering things other than price alone and those. And there's many different stages in the purchasing policy based on the level and complexity of the contract where there's choices that are made. So I think that there's many things that are already in there that that can address some of the concerns of council. We certainly understand what a couple of them are. And I would suggest that instead of going forward with an idea that we overhaul the purchasing policy right now, that we actually do a presentation to committee in the fall to address many of the concerns, point out what's already there, and talk about some of the things that we think should change too. Now, there's a couple of things in there that are asked for, the scoring on every project and whatever. Okay, if we want to do that, there's FTE requirements to do that. That's a huge, huge job with legal implications if you don't do things right, because the contractors are very concerned about this too. They don't want to be getting, you know, some will claim they're picked on if we do things in a certain way. So, you know, there's a lot of implications here, and I had offered before to bring this back as in the form of presentation to a committee, and I'll hold that out there that would still do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fully supportive of this. In my working career, this is kind of working, but when I was working full-time as a project engineer, it was always the case that we assessed the performance of our major contractors. And if they didn't perform, then we took action to either exclude them from tendering opportunities, or we had some serious conversations with them and saw that they made changes that meant that they actually did deliver better in the future. But we don't seem to have that mechanism here. And if, you know, I now stand as a resident, if I see a municipal contract not performing as I would expect, you know, I bring it to the attention of my councillor, i.e. me and John. And you know, we have to recognise that people see the work going on or the work not going on, as the case may be. They see good quality work, they see poor quality work. I think they expect us as their representatives to bring this to attention and to take some action accordingly. And I think what John is suggesting is a sensible way forward. And in fact, I think I heard Rob say that there are things that they, the staff, would also like to see done. So it is perhaps an opportune moment to reflect on this, and maybe the kickoff for that is the presentation that Rob has talked about. But I think we need to go a little further and see a mechanism in place that recognizes good performance, but also deals with poor performance.
Allison.
Thank you, through your worship. I just want to point out, and I appreciate all the comments, that we do have mechanisms in place to evaluate performance, perhaps not to what council would like to see, but a lot of those are in place, and I believe that's what Mr. Walton's referring to, in that doing a presentation, we can actually outline what the specific process is that we currently have, and collectively identify what gaps there are and what council might like to see moving forward. But I think it would benefit everyone to actually understand what our current process is, what's happening behind the scenes, and what the respective risks are to risks and benefits to any changes that may come forward. But I think that initial presentation would benefit everyone in terms of realizing where any potential gaps might lie from council perspective and staff perspective.
Comments? Councillor Chambers?
Just to say that I understand and completely agree with what Councillor Pierce is bringing to our attention. However, I do know that a few things, and municipal procurement and tendering is very, very complicated. And they teach courses on that. You become experts at that. And the gentlemen around the room probably have taken courses on that. You can, as counselors, you can sit in on good roads and they'll give you a cursory overview, but this is very complicated stuff. The courts are filled with lawsuits between contractors and municipalities for screwing up procurement, reputational damage, all kinds of stuff are brought to the courts if you don't do it right. And I do know, and I think the gentleman here would agree with me, that there is a big difference between municipal procurement and procurement in the private sector. The rules are different, that there's legal differences in what municipalities can do as compared to what private individuals can do. So you have to take that into consideration. So what seems to make common sense to lay people might not necessarily be what the legal community tells you, or the professional procurement people tell you. So it's complicated. Another thing, I think you are bound to have a procurement bylaw. Municipalities have to have that. And these bylaws are vetted by experts and lawyers and engineers and all kinds of people. And the dumb farmers like me in the world are not experts at this, and we rely on the experts to tell us what to do. So I have always said that, every contract has a thing in it that you don't necessarily have to take the lowest bid. Well, that doesn't necessarily hold water in many cases, even though it's in the municipal procurement processes. So what I would like to do is just hang on to this resolution. I think the staff recognizes that there are issues that the public brings to councillors about the scope and quality of work, and we need to, as councillors, be cognizant of that and respond to that. But we got to make sure we don't do things to put the municipality at risk legally and going forward. So John will have the last say, and he knows that I agree with what he's trying to do. But what I'd like to do is just hang on to this resolution, allow our staff to make a presentation, have the legal people here, have the engineers here, and so we all recognize that municipal procurement is not a simple thing that can be cured by a resolution like this.
Thank you for that, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Pierce, you're next, and then Councillor Bell. I'm sorry, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, I wanna say, I appreciate the fact how complicated this can be, and I'm not looking for a complete overhaul of this. All I am looking for is, it's my understanding, and again, maybe this presentation is what is required here. It's my understanding that if you are on that pre-qualified list, there's nothing else other than the lowest price once you are on that list and you put in an RFT for a certain tender. I appreciate the fact these people want to make money. That's besides the point. Of course they do, or they wouldn't be in business. I appreciate the fact that they want to cover their costs. Of course they do, or they wouldn't be in business. Jumping through hoops, we don't want to make them jump through hoops. All I'm simply saying is there has to be something in there, and everything I do in my day job as well. If you do a project, you review the project afterwards. What went well? What didn't go well? What can we improve? What went better than what we thought? I think it's crucial. I think it's important. I think it should be part and is part of every project that I'm aware of, is you do a review when you're done to ensure that you did the best and got the best out of that project that you could have. That's all I'm looking for here, is the fact to give us as a county, give us as councillors options that we don't necessarily, that we aren't stuck to the lowest price on some of these things. Has it worked out in the past? Well, yeah, I guess maybe it has, but maybe it's not going to in the future. I'm just looking for options, and from what I've read of the purchasing policy that we have right now, it kind of poses us in there, that it states in there that once you're on that list and it comes down to it, then it goes by lowest price. There's got to be something else in there. And I understand the fact, look at things like, is it on time? Is it on budget? Recognize good work, recognize not so good work, and then understand why the not so good work was there. Was it a factor of something that potentially the contractor did? Yes, no. Was it out of their realm? Who knows, right? But there has to be a review in order to understand that. That's where I want to go with this. That's the only way I want to go with this. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Mr. Walton and then to Councillor Miller.
Through the mayor to Councillor Pierce. I can answer one of your questions right now. The project in question you're talking about, pre-qualification under our purchase policy, once we pre-qualify, it is low tender only, because we pre-qualified those contractors and said that they're eligible to bid on that project. And if we didn't accept one of them, we would be sued and we would be writing a check for their profit instantaneously. That's the law of Ontario, the way that it works. So we pre-qualify in certain jobs because we want a certain level of contractor, and you evaluate them for that project. There's a different part in the purchasing policy which talks about rosters, which would be generally pre-qualifying contractors for certain jobs, generally not really big ones, which is an entirely different thing. So I think this is why we need to have the presentation to clearly state to council what is in there, what the different levels are. There's 4 or 5 different ways that we can procure contracts, maybe 6, I'm not sure off the top of my head. But in pre-qualification, the way we do it right now, we're pre-qualifying for a particular project. They're filling out the forms to show whether they can or can't do that project, and we're evaluating them. So there is only one way you can do that, and it's to accept the low bid then, unless they've made a mistake in their tender.
Thank you. We're going to go to Councillor Miller and then to Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, to you, to Councillor Pierce, I'm glad you read that to us, John, because I had trouble reading the second last paragraph. So the word just has to be cleaned up a little bit there. And I would support this. I think if you stopped at staff be directed to complete a full and comprehensive review, but then you went on to say, well, staff need to do this, and they need to do that, and they need to do this. What I would like, and I mentioned it 2 months ago, and Rob Walton's alluded to it, is we sit down as a council and have an information session, and following that, dialogue between us and staff about what we would like to see in a review of the purchasing/tender policy. Can it be improved? I think we all recognize it can be. I'll tell you right now, there are some things I don't like in this resolution. It doesn't address any of those. So I like the fact that Councilor Pierce brought this forward, because it's gotten a lot of attention, because it needs attention. I just think there's just a slightly better way of getting from point A to point B, and that's with all of us involved. And again, having a good dialogue with staff, and then they can take back everything that we said, all the feedback that we give at that information session, and within legal parameters, put together, basically look at the whole thing again, knowing full well what our feedback is and the problems we have with it. So leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Councillor Garneau, you're next, and maybe Mark, you could come on your way up and have the final word on this.
I'm all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're all right? All right. So Mark, maybe you could just give us an overview of how you see this, this motion.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Rob. I like the idea of doing the full session. Just to give you a little bit of background, because through the process, contractors submit when we do this pre-qualification process. We currently have one for the bridges that runs for 3 years, and there's 3 tiers of contractors within those. There's a level A, a B, and a C, or 1, 2, 3. 1 being the best, they can do any level of bridge across the province. And it has something to do with like price, like value of work, their experience, and what they do. And we evaluate on that because we do have some very large structures. The second level will be all the other type of structures, and the third would just be culverts. And it's based on, when they submit, they have to provide like sufficient amount of information from past 5 years of jobs, and we evaluate all of that to rank them into this. That's how the bridges works. If there was a situation where there was a contractor on that list for the 3 years that we had to make a decision on, we would bring information back to council and say we need to remove them and get them off this list, and we would bring that to council and say they need to go. It hasn't happened yet. We haven't had to go there. Everything else, like Rob alluded to, is all specific project pre-qualified contractors. So when we put the one out this winter, which is like where this one has gone, there's multiple projects on that. They were each pre-qualified separately because of the complexity of what they are. The one for the roundabout that will go at Scott Ave, we specifically stated that we will only review or accept ones that from contractors that had previously built a 2-lane roundabout while maintaining traffic. There were multiple submissions for contractors for that. Only the contractors that had actually had that experience were pre-qualified. We got some laughing by some other ones saying, oh, we're doing it now, or we've done roundabouts. Yeah, but you didn't meet what the clear objective of this pre-qualification was. There's also been a contractor that has done work previously in the county that has submitted pre-qualifications multiple times over the past few years. They have not been pre-qualified because of the work that they had done on a previous contract. So as at staff level, we do have that control. It did not eliminate them from bidding on non-pre-qualified work. And when we had discussions with them, they said, get a job that you don't have to pre-qualify for, do a good job on it, and then we will be able to consider you for pre-qualification in the future. And they understood that, and now they're working towards that. So those are just to give you a bit more, and we will expand on this further in that education session. But those are the things, like, just so you're aware, at the staff level that we do and we review as a party to it. This one in particular for West River, because of when the pre-qualification was done and things that had changed in the spring, things occurred. That's the challenge we ran into. We believe that that they are coming with a better crew and better work to rectify that, and we won't have an issue, and staff will be involved to ensure that things go better. And if not, then we'll deal with it. But currently, we believe that will happen. So,
thanks, Mark. Councillor Bell? No, you're good. I think it's been great discussion. Councillor Pierce, I think it's great. Oh, Councillor Pierce, do you want to speak?
No, go ahead, Mr. Mayor. I'll go after you.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's great that you brought this forward, and I think it's great that staff hasn't seen it as hostile. Staff has not dug in and taken offense to this, which I think is great, because they do recognize there's room for improvement and other ways of doing things. I think that's great. It shows a cooperation between council and staff. At this point, I guess we just take a vote, and if it passes, it passes, and if it fails, we talk about how we can maybe do something a different way. I don't know whether everyone's okay with just doing that, just having the vote. Councillor Pierce, you're going to speak before we call the vote.
Yeah, just the final word there. And first of all, I did not mean to be hostile with any of this. And again, I think with the potential of now having this education session, I think that may answer some of the questions, because from my understanding, from what I've just heard tonight as well, is there's things on here, there's things with the whole policy that staff would like to change. And there's also things that I've heard that potentially Councillor Miller would like to change in there as well. So I think maybe this education session would do us good, and we might come out of the other end of it with a different thought. So again, as much as I firmly support what I'm putting in here, obviously, I would suggest a deferral until such time as that meeting takes place, with the option of bringing it back after that, if my seconder is okay.
Councillor Bell, are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah. So the vote then will be to defer this after staff has arranged and given council some sort of an education on the process and legally what we can and can't do, and do it properly, and then we'll come back and get the wording right, and everyone will leave happy. I think it's very good. Thank you, Councillor Pierce, for that. I think it's the right thing for us to do. All those in favor of a deferral? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Other business is number 10, and Councillor Kyle, you have something to talk about?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And bear with me for a second. I'm just going to provide some context for why I'm bringing this up. But as you might recall, the Government Relations Committee met a few months ago in anticipation of the AMO conference coming up next month to come up with a list of delegations we might like to try and acquire. So we ended up putting in requests for the Ministry of Transportation, as well as the OMAFA, Ministry of Agriculture. And so one of the ones we were successful in getting was the Ministry of Transportation. However, we had put in to speak about rest acres and the issues we were having at the time. In the time between when we put the request in and when we were accepted for that delegation, we obviously, as Allison has let us know in recent weeks, have made some really good progress with rest acres. So that was really not something we needed to speak with them about. And the other piece was that when they came back and said that we were successful in getting that delegation, it would be a joint delegation with the City of Brantford. So the staff had reached out to the city to see what they had put in the request for. They had 4 other items not related to rest acres, so staff had said, okay, you know what, we'll turn it down because what we had issues that we wanted to talk about, they're not really issues anymore. Let the City of Brantford have their full time with the minister. Since then, the ministry has called and emailed staff multiple times to find out why we declined it, which is unusual. Typically that doesn't happen. They just say, thanks for letting us know, on to the next one, because they have a list of people or a list of municipalities. So there's obviously something that they may want to have us in the room for. To this point, we haven't been able to figure out exactly what, other than the comments we keep receiving from both our provincial representatives as well as folks from the city, is that we should be in the room. So I wanted to bring it up here to get council's thoughts on whether or not we should try and be in the room for that delegation, recognizing that if we're not there, we don't know what they want to talk about. And in some respects, it probably would be wise to hear what they have to say, even if it's to just say, this is new information, we'll take it back and we can further discuss with council. But wanted to bring it up here because we do need to make a decision as to whether or not we want to try and be in the room for that delegation or not. So open to the folks around the table's thoughts on that, so that we can figure out which path we want to go.
Okay, that's great. Before we start and open it up to the floor, I'd like to say that the reason that we got out of that delegation is because the mayor resigned. And we canceled the delegation before he decided he wasn't going to resign. So the difference of us leaving was because a very big component had been taken out of the mix. So between the time that Mayor Davis resigned and then came back, that's when we decided that everything was getting kind of unusual. And we stepped back because we still haven't been told why we're going to be in the room. We're not prepared to know. The city won't tell us what we're going to be talking about. And I don't think it's good to go into a room when you don't know what's going to be talked about. But I do understand that it's good to be in the room to hear what's been said. So it's a real big double-sorted thing. But the reason that we canceled was not because we didn't want to go to the delegation with the city. It was because the mayor resigned, and that's when we did it. And we didn't know that he was coming back. So, Councillor House?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple comments and a couple questions, maybe. Given that the city of Brantford's mayor's resignation has reversed and is kind of a do-over, that theoretically stabilizes that situation that was impacting our decision. I believe that if there's discussions with the Ministry of Transportation, I'd rather we be in the room than not in the room. And even if we are completely going in blind, if between now and then, it's what, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, even if in that time, if we don't learn any details, I think we can still be in the room. We can not necessarily say much, but we can listen with all of our ears, those who are there. I guess one of my questions is, we have a government relations committee. Are most of those committee members going to be in attendance at AMO? I'm seeing a nod from Jennifer, so Councillor Kyle. So I think it's better for us to be there than not be there.
Okay. My response to that is, I think that when you're going into a delegation with another municipality that we don't really know what's up, that we don't do it at a 3-minute or a 5-minute delegation. We have a meeting with the minister, which we were prepared to make, so that we could have an actual a meeting that we could talk about whatever they want to talk about. But I don't think we should be doing it a hopscotch for 3 minutes. I don't think that's a good idea at all, to have something put on the table or suggested, and then in 3 minutes they ring a bell and we leave, they knock on the door and it's over, and they leave us with thoughts that may not sit well with us. So I believe that it's very important that we meet with the city of Brantford together with the minister, but not at a 3-minute roundabout or a dating session or whatever they call the delegations, where they knock on your door and you're gone. If we're going to have a meeting, let's have a meeting and let's talk for more than 3 minutes. That was my concern, that it would just, something would be said which put the temperature of the room at a point where it wasn't good for either municipality after the 3 minutes were over. Or 4 minutes, I don't know how much they are, 3 or 4 minutes. That's my answer to that. I will go to the meeting. I'm going anyway. I was scheduled to go, and I'll be in Ottawa, so I have no trouble sitting there. I just don't think anything good's going to come of it. I would rather have a meeting with the Minister of Transportation on our own as a proper meeting for more than 3 minutes. Councillor House.
Thanks. And I think we share some goals here, but perhaps disagree a little bit respectfully too. There's some advantage to the fact that a delegation with the ministers has a time limit, and if that meeting that we would prefer to see with the city, with the minister, if that doesn't happen between now and AMO, I still believe that not just you, but you and other members from our government relations committee should be in the room to see firsthand what the dialogue is. And if we're blindsided, or if we're surprised, or if just new information is presented, it's kind of like being in court, where you say, this is all new information for us, and we have we need an opportunity to discuss with our council.
Right. Okay, that's great. Councillor House, they've got 4 asks on the table. we have no reason to be there. We have no asks. Our asks were put aside. So they're going to, again, remember it's 3 or 5 minutes and they have 4 asks to the minister. We have no asks. So I'm not sure how fast people can talk, but I'm just not sure this is the venue for something as serious as a meeting between the County of Brant and the City of Brantford. And I respectfully sort of disagree with you too. Councillor Kyle, you brought it up. Oh, Councillor Bell, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's totally inappropriate to go to a delegation with a minister of the province without knowing what the subject matter is. Having done 2 or 3 myself at Roma, I've gone in prepared. I have a brief. I know what I'm going to say. I almost know what the minister's going to say back to me. I think if you go in there without knowing it, you're on a hiding to nothing. I think the very least we should do, recognizing that you will be there, Jennifer will be there, I'll be there. We can attend, we can make a presence, but I think we should write to the Mayor of Brantford, requesting that he gives us the details of what the asks are, so that we in turn have an opportunity to prepare ourselves. We will look like complete fools if we are caught unaware of what the subject matter is. We'll get asked questions that we'll get embarrassed about giving answers to. So I think we either find out what the matter is, and then we can prepare and attend, or we simply don't attend.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Coleman.
I totally 100% agree with Councillor Bell, except one difference: we won't look like fools. We will be fools.
Thanks, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Coleman.
And I totally agree with Councillor Chambers and Councillor Bell on this, Mr. Mayor, and I think we need to be in the room one way or another, because we all know what this is going to be talked about. It's transportation, and that transportation goes through the County of Brant.
Councillor Garneau, I'm sorry, Councillor Oakley, then Councillor Garneau.
Through the Mayor, I would, I think this is a bit of a, we're darned if we do, darned if we don't situation here where it's unfortunate that the sort of conversation and what the topics are haven't been made clear to us either from the provincial government side or the city side of things, which is not particularly acting in good faith, which is unfortunate. But I do think there are, I would agree with Councillor Coleman that I think it's best that we are in the room for this, because I would hesitate, or I would shudder to think what could happen if there's decisions being made. We've been given the opportunity to be present, even though we're not being told what it's about, and then we're not there to speak our piece, whatever that piece may be, even if it is, as Councillor Houser suggests, just we need to take this and go back and come back to you, because if decisions get made without us, I would be concerned.
Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think that there are some lessons learned from recent meetings with the city referring back to joint services, and I think that may give us an indication of perhaps what might be on their agenda as it relates to the ministry. I think it's important that we're in the room. I think it's also important that those who represent us that day are briefed on the transportation master plan, because that is our guiding document. And if we're before the Ministry of Transportation, we at least know which sandbox we're in that day. I think it's important that our representatives aren't there to make a decision or to speak on behalf of council, having not actually formed a position, even on. I suppose we did form a position on the items before joint services, and it was through the transportation master plan. But to make sure that we don't get ourselves tripped up in that, I agree with others around the table that we should make an ask of the city for the briefing materials and what they intend to advocate for, not only so our senior staff can see how that aligns with what we already have, but so that, as Councillor Chambers says, we don't look like fools. And I also want to reflect that in the statement that Mayor Davis from the city made about his decision to, in fact, continue on with his role, he did allude to getting along with the county, and it appears that the first opportunity to show good faith in that bucket is actually before us this evening when we make that ask. So I suppose our city colleagues are likely watching us tonight, if not on YouTube tomorrow, and I think this is a good opportunity for them to show some leadership in that area, and perhaps maybe we can move forward with a different foot.
Any other comments? Oh, Councillor Pierce. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with listening to this, it's my understanding here that the city has 4 asks to the minister. So absolutely, I think the city needs to, you know, let us know what those asks are for sure. I don't think this falls on the minister because it's not up to, I don't think it's up to the minister to tell us what the city is going to be requesting. I think this 100% falls on the city to come to the table and let us know, you know, if the roles are reversed, they would want the exact same thing. And I think Councillor Garneau just hit it right on the head there with the fact of Mayor Davis's statement. And here is a perfect opportunity to come to the table and walk the walk and talk the talk. So, but I at the end of all that, I think it's crucial that we are in the room. And you know, if it comes down, hopefully it doesn't come down to it. But if it comes down to it in the end, then we make it known at that meeting that, hey, this is the first we're hearing this. Are we going to look like fools? Quite possibly, but at least we can honestly say we tried. We sent a letter requesting it. We sent another letter requesting it. They have told us nothing. This is news to us. We need time to digest it.
Okay. Councillor Chambers.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm just, this is just plain weird. You want to be in the room to see what's going on. This is a delegation of the city to speak with the minister. And Brant County, have I got that wrong?
Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, through you, the original, it was to be a joint meeting with the city of Brantford, the county, the city, and the MTO.
And what were we going to talk about?
Our request was to speak about Rest Acres, and when it came back, that wasn't on the table. It was just that it was a joint meeting with the city.
But we don't know what we're talking about.
Correct.
So we're going to go to meet a minister of the crown, but we don't know what we're talking about. And we're going to sit there and find out what we're going to talk about. We have no status. We're not going to be able to speak like it. This just, you don't do that. Councilor Bell is 100% right. You go prepared. You're meeting with a minister. You're not having a little fireside chat with the city and the ministry, but we're not even supposed to chat. We just got to watch and then react. Well, we may not be able to react. And we're sitting there as spectators in a delegation of the city to the minister. That's just plain weird. If you want to be part of a delegation, then you want to know what the presentation is going to be because your name is on the presentation. We're going to be there as Brant County, not knowing what the hell's going on and not knowing what we're going to say and not knowing what questions are going to be asked. That's just, you shouldn't do that. I'm sorry. Don't be in the room if you don't know what the hell's going on. Make your own delegation.
We're gonna call on Alicia, but before she gets here, let's keep calling this a delegation because it's not a meeting. A meeting is when you have an hour and a half to talk about something, you have a break and someone brings you a donut. This is 4 items that the city of Brantford wants to discuss in 5 minutes. It's not a meeting. We're not trying to get out of a meeting. If they want to talk seriously about something that concerns the county of Brant, let's have a meeting. But I'm not prepared to sit there, as Councillor Bell said, and look like a monkey because they have something on their mind and they won't tell us. Why would we go? And as I said, don't forget, and it's still important, although Mayor Davis is back, we canceled after he resigned. There was a period of time of 2 days where we spoke as the mayor and as staff to think, you know what, things are changing here. We don't know really what's going on. And that's when we opted out. We were prepared. We were going as a delegation, a joint delegation, even after Rest Acres Road disappeared. We were going. We still said we would go. Then something else happened. Now something else has happened. And it's not a meeting. If you want to have a meeting with the city of Brantford, I'm all for it. We can book it tomorrow. But I don't think we should do this. It doesn't feel right to me. I mean, I'm going to be there, and if this council decides that I'm going to be there as the mayor, I will be there with my committee, Lucas and Jennifer. We will be there because that's what you want us to do. We'll do it. I think it's a really bad idea. Alicia.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to council, I'm going to try. Are you okay with me here, or do you want me to go up there?
No.
Fine there? Okay.
We can hear you.
So just to provide a little bit of insight into, what exactly happened. So as per usual, we submitted delegation requests through to the conferences. The requested topic for the Ministry of Transportation was Rest Acres Road because we're having significant backlog issues with regards to the traffic study, which was being held up. So we received a response from the ministry affirming that we were successful in our delegation. However, it was now going to be a joint delegation. When we found out that it was going to be a joint delegation, my team reached out to the city of Brantford and said, we understand it's now going to be a joint delegation. Our delegation is on the topic of Rest Acres Road. What is your delegation topic on? Maybe there can be some efficiencies, or maybe we can somehow come up with a joint submission. We did not receive a response to those communications. In the interim, Rob Walton attended a meeting with some Ministry of Transportation staff, along with some City of Brantford staff, just with regards to what this potential delegation might look like. Brantford at that point brought up they had 4 potential topics that they wanted to talk about. 2 we can potentially infer might have relation to the County of Brant, one of them being regional transit, and another one being their transportation issues in West Brant. At that meeting, Rob Walton was discussing what it was that the county was going to be there at and to discuss. And following that, it was determined that due to progress made on Rest Acres Road and the fact that we would be one of 5 topics covered in 15 minutes, perhaps it wasn't beneficial for the county to attend. And so that was the background behind our declining the delegation. Now, if county council wants to go ahead and say we still are we're interested again in the delegation, a few things. First of all, I'm confident that the time's still held because it was held jointly for Brantford and the county, so it would still be there. Briefing materials were due today. Now we could still submit them if needed, but we would need immediate direction in terms of what the delegation's on and who's going to be leading that and drafting briefing materials for submission. So I don't know if Rob has any further.
Mr. Walton.
No. Through the mayor to council, no, I would agree with everything Alicia said. I was actually attended that as acting CAO when Allison was away.
Well, there you go. I don't know what we want. Do you want to call a vote? How do you want to deal with it? It's very complicated. Councillor House.
It is complicated, and I respect the different points of view. Just so we can settle the discussion, I'll move that we do plan to attend and be in the room. And if there's a seconder, we can either discuss or have a vote, and at least we know.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Garneau seconding that. Before we go any further, Allison wants to speak.
Thank you, Your Worship. I apologize. We're looking for a clarification because if we do attend, we immediately need to have direction on what we submit in terms of briefing materials to the ministry. So we would have to do that immediately.
Comments? It's on the floor for discussion. Oh, Councillor Pierce, I'm sorry. I hope you weren't doing that for very long.
It's all good, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if possible, through Councillor House's motion there, I would like to put a friendly amendment that we attend only if we get a response back from the City of Brantford to understand what we're walking into. Because I agree, if we don't know, I don't think we should be there. So I would suggest that we attend only if we understand what the city's requests are. And to Alice's point, as far as direction, my understanding from what I'm hearing here, because of the movement that was made on Rest Acres Road, as far as us as a county requiring a delegation, I don't think that's necessary anymore, unless I'm wrong with that. But from what I'm hearing, things are moving on that now, so that's not necessary. But as I say, I think we should be there only if we understand what the asks are from the city.
Councillor Garneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if I've got some middle ground here, recognizing that items were due today to the ministry. Perhaps a letter on behalf of the county indicating we look forward to learning more about the city's priorities at the delegation, and referencing our transportation master plan, and that we will take back what is learned through that process and commit to further discussion. Something to that effect. And I would then also say that I think it's important that we make sure that we support our mayor in that context. Unfortunately, I'm not able to come up to Ottawa, but I think you've got a good team around you.
More discussion. Councillor Chambers, are you any more settled over all of this?
I have never been at a delegation where I went to speak with the minister not knowing what I'm going to say. And that's what you're doing. So, yeah, get in the room and as Councillor Miller says, let's get in Chatham's room too. Let's see what they're having to say, and let's go into all the rooms. It's goofy. It's just not done that way. It's a delegation. You're right. It's not a meeting. It's a delegation. You present to the ministry something that is important to you. So Brantford can do that. That's fine. But they want us to be sitting there watching. Don't say anything. Just watch. What if they say something we don't want? We say, no, we don't like, no, we can't do that. It's craziness to be at a delegation of the city of Brantford to the ministry because we want to watch. Go ahead and watch and make monkeys of yourself as you.
Councillor Oakley and then Councillor Miller.
Through the mayor, I think particularly given the timeline of having to have delegation materials in tonight, which I think given that we need the context of what's going on with the city of Brantford is frankly impossible, that we either go along the lines of something along what Councillor Garneau is suggesting, which is that we're open to conversations about what happens in that room, or and referencing our transportation master plan, or simply sticking with declining, because while I initially was in favor of being in the room, I don't see how it's feasible unless we were to request additional time, which I don't think we'd get. It's just simply not, I don't think, feasible at this stage then to be able to make an informed decision on what our delegation is going to be about if we have to submit that tonight, and Brantford's probably not going to get to us in the next 4 hours. So it's just my sort of 2 cents.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, and then we're going to hear from Mr. Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Jennifer did a good job of explaining how we got here, and you did as well. So I understand it's not maybe the normal process, but it is what it is. It's Brantford's delegation. If we, as the county, were going to make a delegation and Brantford was debating whether they should come or not, I would kind of feel offended if the shoe were on the other foot. So I won't support the motion.
Mr. Walton.
Through the mayor to council. I was at the meeting, the mayor was at the meeting which we held with the ministry and Brantford on last Monday, I guess it was. We didn't get much notice of that meeting, and it was Friday afternoon. It was arranged for first thing Monday morning. So, as Alicia told you before, we did try and find out from Brantford before what their ask of the minister was. We didn't find out before the meeting, but they did list them out at the meeting. There was 4 of them, and 2 of them have some interest to us. One would be regional transit, and the other one was their transportation issues in West Brantford. What I talked about at the meeting was the whole lack of transportation, regional transportation by the ministry in this area, and the fact that, they're asking us to pay for the ramp terminals on the 403 and at entirely our cost, now estimated at $12 million, and how all of this is right when they're, they actually own both roads that he's involved with, Highway 24 and Highway 403. Now, we are causing some of the growth pressures in this area and should pay for some of it through development charges, and we're planning to do that. So there's the whole, that's more than just a delegation, that's a whole meeting with the ministry to talk about stuff like that. If you've got a 15-minute delegation, you get 3 minutes to talk about that, it's hardly worth the time, that's for sure. So that's what the discussion was from our side at that. I think the initial request for this delegation was we were not getting approvals for our development to go ahead on Rest Acres 403. That's not happening anymore. We've got a plan for the first of those developments to go now. We'll be issuing some building permits in the next period of time. That's going, we do need to talk to them about this whole costing issues on the ramp terminal project, $12 million, and how that's going to go. But how we wedge that into a 15-minute delegation, which has 5 topics, I'm not really sure. So just so that you know what happened at the meeting, that's what happened. I think the mayor was there. I think he mostly agreed with what I had to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I hope council understands that I've taken on the role of the villain here in the public eye. Media has not been fair with me, and I have been seen as the roadblock to a lot of nonsense. And that's just the way it is. That's not true. It's not the way it laid out. It's not the way it fell together. And I'm getting a little tired of it. And I mean, Councillor House put this on the floor. You're not even going to be there, sir. I have to do this, and I have to look like the monkey. I think it's very offensive when seasoned councillors give their opinion. They've been doing this for years. They say it's odd. In fact, they said it's strange. They said it's weird. What else do we have to say it is? One of our 3 members that are going to be the delegation have already said, you know what, with the time restraints, perhaps we shouldn't do it. He's changed his mind. Councillor Kyle wants to go. I will go because I am here to do what council wants me to do. But I would hope, again, you don't throw me into the fire so that the headlines after that not meeting delegation, which nothing can be done, there's no time to do anything important. There's really not any time. It's not a meeting. I would never turn down a meeting with the city to discuss something that is beneficial to the county and the city with a business plan. I've said that publicly over and over again. I am not a stumbling block. I am just cautious, and I'm very aware of the difference between a meeting and a delegation. With that being said, I would hope that my council would support me and not make me do that again. We've just done that 2 weeks ago. I just spent 4 days with the mayor and he didn't speak to me. I don't know how you can think this is good for me, for the council, or for the county. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you, and respectfully, I no intention to throw you to the wolves or anything like that. I think I would just end by saying that the ministry asked us to come together to that delegation. They must have a reason. So in my opinion, I know I haven't been around as long as Councillor Chambers, but I do a fair bit of lobbying with work. If the ministry asks us to do something, then I think we should really strongly consider that. So, I mean, if council direction is otherwise, that's fine. We won't go. But my final thought would be that they originally asked us to come together, so there's a reason for that.
Any other discussion? Councillor Chambers?
That's fine, but the reason they asked to come together is we had something to present. We don't have that anymore. That's the difference. We don't have nothing to present.
Councillor Bell?
I'm continuing to be troubled. I think we are potentially going to throw you to the wolves if we say go ahead. So the motion that Councillor House has put forward, I think, yes, we go, but only if we understand what we're going in for, and only if we're prepared to be able to respond should we get questions from the minister. But to go in not knowing, to go in unprepared is folly, and I would not do that to you.
So it's on the floor. Councillor House has got it on the floor. It has a seconder in Councillor Garneau. Is that right? Yep. Madam Clerk, if you could repeat what we're voting on, please.
Sorry, just give me a moment. Okay, so that County of Brant Council attends the delegation in conjunction with the City of Brantford with the Minister of Transportation at the upcoming 2024 AMO conference, provided the City of Brantford has provided staff with additional information and or briefing material as originally requested.
I'd like a recorded vote.
Alrighty, I'm just gonna go one by one here. If you can affirm or deny, please. Okay, Councillor Kyle.
Yes.
Councillor McAlpine.
Yes.
Councillor House.
Yes.
Councillor Oakley.
No.
Councillor Bell.
No.
Councillor Pierce.
No.
Councillor Miller.
No.
Councillor Chambers.
No.
Councillor Coleman.
Yes.
Councillor Garneau.
Yes.
Mayor
Bailey.
No.
And that is defeated.
Okay. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we ask you, Mr. Mayor, to write to the Mayor of Brantford for clarification as to what they're going to say in that meeting. And only on receipt of that should we consider that you attend.
Seeking a seconder. Councillor Kyle, I'd like to speak to it. I'll be at the convention anyway after I get receipt of something from the mayor of Brantford. I would add to your motion that I speak with Councillor Oakley and Councillor Kyle, and if it's a reasonable letter saying things that are beneficial to the county of Brant, that we will attend. No, it wasn't just defeated because it's different now. It puts the decision of whether we meet in our hands as a committee, Councillor Oakley and Councillor Kyle and myself, if we're happy with the correspondence from the city of Brantford. Councillor Pierce.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and through you, just to the motion there, if possible, not necessarily for the benefit of the county, but involves anything to do with the county, depending on who knows what the asks are, right?
That's right. Yeah, because it really, staff still needs direction as to what to do. But if we all weren't going to be there, if Councillor Oakley and Councillor Kyle and myself weren't going to be there, it would be a little bit different. But I mean, for us to be lurking around the corner knowing that the delegation's happening, we're going to feel kind of crazy if we're not happy with the letter, with the correspondence. They've got to tell us stuff. They can't just do this to us and invite us to a party and not tell us what the theme is. Who would go to a theme party without knowing the theme? So that's what I would suggest we do. Councillor Bell, if you're okay with that. And we have a seconder for that. We didn't we? Alicia?
Through your worship to council, I just have a question of clarification. So the Ministry of Transportation confirmed that the County of Brant had a delegation. We have declined that delegation. So I want to understand, if this motion passes tomorrow, I am writing to the ministry and telling them that the county wants that delegation? No. Is that what this is? Only through, because we have to provide a list of people who are going to attend. So if the county does not respond back and say, we want that space, the only way I could see councillors being added at a later date would be to request that Brantford add you. So I'm just looking for clarification in terms of what we are to do tomorrow.
Okay, well, I need clarification because I was told that it would still be open to us as a joint delegation. I didn't know we had severed it. I mean, the time is still there.
So to Mayor Bailey, that is correct. So the county declined the delegation. I would assume that Brantford accepted the delegation. So I would assume that the time is still held, but as to whether or not the ministry would accept another delegation of the county at this time, I can't guarantee, but I don't understand how there would be an opportunity for councillors of this council to get in front of the minister if the county does not accept that delegation.
All right, then Allison, do you want to speak?
Thank you, through your worship. Just to add to that, and that's exactly what I was about to say. But also, we need to submit what we are going to present. Unless we are invited by Brantford to join on their topics, we need to submit what we are going to actually present at that delegation also. So there needs to be a topic, in other words, when we respond tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm done talking about it. Councillor Kyle?
A quick question for Allison, Mr. Mayor. Allison, I know you have your meeting with the CAO from the city tomorrow, so could we maybe leave it that if you have a conversation with Brian Hutchins tomorrow and you're able to deduce what the topics are and whether we would be welcome, then we pursue it further, and if not, we don't go further, or open to your thoughts on that?
Through your worship, I can certainly do that upon council direction, noting that there will not be another council meeting between now and so as long as that's the direction this evening, I can certainly do that.
Councillor McAlpine.
Just a small point. Normally when we have delegations, we include everybody that's going to the conference, not just a select few. So I just want to confirm that the other John would want to go and myself. I'm not sure if anybody else is going.
No, this is becoming ridiculous. It's becoming ridiculous. I understand, Councillor McAlpine, that that's what we usually do. This is a very unusual situation, circumstance. I don't think 4 people in the room or 5 people in the room will help us out when no one can talk and we don't know what we're talking about. So the whole thing is bizarre, truly bizarre. And I'm taking my offer off the table.
I think we have to get down to the fundamental issue here. I mean, we don't know what we're going to be looking at. We don't know what the subject matter will be. We're not being involved in the preparation. If the city can't be courteous enough and respectful enough to give us that detail, then we should just say, sorry, we're not going to do it. And I think what I suggested, what my motion was, stands. If they don't come back with an answer, irrespective of whether the province and the conference administration says we can or we can't go, we don't want to go if we're not being told what we're asked to talk about, and we're not prepared for it. So I think my motion stands. It'll work its way through the protocol if we do find out that we're interested in going.
And you have a seconder for that? And the clerk's, Councillor Coleman?
Maybe off the topic, Mr. Mayor, but in talking to my fellow councillor, Councillor Garneau and I would like to attend to that meeting. Since the Master Transportation Plan will be going through Ward 5. We would like to be there.
Yeah, if we're going to meet at all.
Yep. Yeah.
If we're going to the meeting, yeah. The delegation, not a meeting, delegation. Okay, so we have it on the floor. I have a seconder. Yep, David Miller.
Thank you. I'm just, could you repeat your motion?
Put your mic on, please.
Sorry, John. Yeah, I'm requesting that the Mayor write to his counterpart, the Mayor of Brantford, requesting information as to the content of the delegation to get an understanding of whether it actually is of interest for us to attend and whether it's relevant to our success as a county. If it's not, then we should not go. If it is, then I leave it to the Mayor and to the other 2 members of the committee, the Government Relations Committee, to decide on how to proceed afterwards.
Okay. So since you made your motion, since then we've had 4 other people want to come to the meeting. So we now have 2, 4, 6, 7 people coming to a meeting where we have no agenda, no purpose of being there, and that's the way it's going to lay out.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure I can make that jump that you made. I think Brian might have been talking about a different meeting. I certainly don't want to go, even if John does want to go. I think if we have our Government Relations Committee there almost in total, then we should leave it to them to decide how to proceed forward in terms of attendance.
Councillor Chambers.
Here's how it works. City of Brantford asked for a delegation. They got it. County of Brent asked for a delegation. We got it. The minister said, come together. Since then, we've resolved our differences. We don't need to come and talk about what we wanted to talk about. So we withdrew. So the city still has a delegation. The city wants us to be there. It's up to them to ask us to be there as part of their delegation. It's not up to us to ask them what they're talking about to figure out whether we want to go or not. That's up to them to invite us. I've made lots of presentations at SCORE where I have, the SCORE has forwarded the information, made the delegation to the ministry. I, as the chairman of SCORE, asked Jennifer and Lucas and whoever else wanted to be there, Federation, if you want to come on and support our delegation. That's what the city should do if they want us to be there. If Lucas and Jennifer and McAlpine and Bell and Miller barged into the SCORE presentation just to sit there and watch, that's because that's what you're doing. That would be silly. That would be like, I would be ticked off if you did that. But if I asked you, sure, come. If the city wants us to be there, all they got to do is call up, Mr. Mayor, we're making a delegation. We understand your issue is resolved. Can you come and support us and our delegation? This is what we're going to talk about. That's how it should be. It's not up to us to get into their delegation. We don't need a delegation. Our issue is solved. Why it's so simple. I don't understand why we're throwing the mayor to the wolves and going around the circle trying to get ourselves into a delegation to speak about something that we don't know what we're supposed to be speaking about. It's craziness.
We need to stop talking about this. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, just to follow on what Councillor Chambers said, I think the ministry has asked that we attend. That I think is the overriding request. But we won't go unless we know what we're talking about.
The ministry asked us to come with the city to present our what we wanted to talk about. We said we got that resolved. We don't want to talk about that. So, Mr. Minister, we've resolved the issues. We've declined that, and they've accepted it. It's not them.
I think what's got Councillor Kyle, what she's told us is that since we resolved it and said we weren't coming, they've contacted us again and asked us to come. Isn't that right, Councillor Kyle?
And Alicia can correct me if I'm wrong, but they reached out to find out why we were declining, which is very unusual. Typically, they would just say, we have a list, thank you for letting us know, on to the next. So the fact that they reached out is unusual, and in conversations with folks from the province and from the city, the comments have been that why wouldn't you be in the room if it involves you? And we don't know what it involves, but that's the comments we keep getting. So clearly there's something that they want to discuss.
Okay, so we voted on all of that. It failed. So that's over. Councillor Bell, you have something on the floor. It says, I'm going to write a letter to Mayor Davis tomorrow and ask him why he would want me in the room or what my involvement is in the discussions of the delegation. And then when he writes me back, Councillor Bell, what am I to do with the letter?
I'm happy to leave it to you and the Government Relations Committee to assess whether it makes sense. We don't have another council meeting, so we can't do it collectively. We can do it as a subgroup.
Okay. So it has a seconder, and it's clear what we're voting on. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? So it carries. So that's what I'll do tomorrow is I'll send the Mayor of Brantford a letter asking what my involvement at the delegation is. And go from there. I don't blame them for leaving. I feel very uneasy. I mean, the damage has been done. We're being recorded. The city's watching. They saw what was just a circus, I think. So the damage has been done. I mean, press is here, and I'm sure it's going to be front and center tomorrow. I think now we go in camera. Is that right? Where am I? We're going in camera. Who's taking us in camera? Councillor Coleman, you're going to take us in camera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by the new seconder. Councillor Miller.
Councillor Miller.
The Brant County Council convene in camera to discuss RRPT-0376-24 S239. Personal matters about an individual, identify an individual, including municipal or local board employees.
Yep. All those in favor? We're going to go in camera. Do we need 5 minutes or we're going to keep going? Okay. We're now going to go on to number 12. Before we go on to the bylaws, though, I want to take a moment to talk to Councillor Kyle. I hope you didn't take offense to me referencing Robert's experience in the delegations. You said something, and I would never, ever second guess anything you said or any of your opinions. And I wanted to wait and do it in open session because that's where I said it. So I hope you didn't take offense to that, because I didn't mean anything by it. I was noticing Robert's frustration, and I was reading him properly because he left the room. He was really quite upset. So that's why I was trying to make reference to the fact that Robert had a little bit more experience maybe than this side of the room, including myself. So I hope you didn't take offense to that. Okay, thank you. Takes us to number 12, bylaws, and Councillor McAlpine, you have those. All those in favor?
The microphone on, please.
What's going on?
I didn't have my microphone.
Okay. Do you want to do it again?
Sure. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Oakley, that bylaw 80/24 be read the first time.
All those in favor of the first reading of the bylaw? Can you do it again, please, Mr. McAlpine?
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Oakley, that bylaw 80/24 be read a second time and all clauses and preambles be adopted.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the second reading of the bylaws? Seeing none, all those in favor? And you're going to try it one more time, Councillor McAlpine, for the third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Coleman, that bylaw 80/24 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
All those in favor of the third reading of the bylaws? Anyone opposed? Councillor Pierce, do you have a question?
Nope, I was just voting in favor, Mr. Mayor.
All right, that's great. Is there anything else anyone wants to mention or talk about before we? It was a very strange meeting tonight. Very strange meeting indeed. I hope no feelings were hurt. I hope everyone leaves the same way they came in. I felt like it got a little gnarly, but we survived it. We're down a councillor. We lost a councillor in the shuffle, but I think we got some things accomplished, and I hope everything else works out the way it's supposed to work out. With that being said, I'll call the meeting adjourned, knowing that we're going to meet again on September the 10th. Thank you.